Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris, and I am here to give my review on the latest Darren Aronofsky film, The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser. This is one that I believe came out, it came out last year in like September, I think, at film festivals. But this came out for us, at least, widespread release in the UK last week, but I only had a chance to get to it today. So I apologize for the lateness of this review. But I'm here nonetheless, and quite early, a lot earlier than I usually go live on these things. I honestly can't remember the last time I did a stream, and it was daylight outside, but here I am anyway. And we've already got Carl. Carl's here. That's awesome. Good to see you back. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So I fully intended to go and see this film last week. I had my ticket booked and everything, but life, other commitments, and other things that I had to attend, and also kind of understanding what kind of film this was. I'm no stranger to Darren Aronofsky's work. I'm a big fan of his. I love loads of his films. The Fountain, The Wrestler, Black Swan, and Mother. Requiem for a Dream as well. Jesus Christ. Pretty much more or less all the films that he's made. I'm a big fan of. They're not films that I tend to go back and rewatch a lot of the times because they are so emotionally wrought and impactful, and The Whale is certainly no exception to that. I think partly the reason that I wanted to jump on this so early as well, rather than, saving it for tonight, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., whatever it happened to be, is that this film left a significant impact on me after the film concluded, during the credits, and on the entire drive home. So it's kind of something I wanted to get my relatively, first opinions on there and then whilst they're still fresh in my mind. Before I jump into the review, though, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more reviews, discussions, and live streams. I am actually at the cinema a number of times this week as well. I think the next couple of films, I'm trying to get all the Academy Awards films watched. And indeed, the Academy Awards, if I recall, are a month today. So I think it's going to be the 13th of March for us in the UK. It's going to be like 1 a.m. in the morning. So it's going to be like the early hours of Monday morning. And I'll be going live, and I still have a lot of films that I need to get watched. I think I added it up. I think I've got about 8 to 10 films that I need to watch. I'm going to go mostly for the Best Picture nominees and the Best Animated Feature nominees. And if I get some of the other ones, like this one, for example, that are a strong contender within the category, certainly in terms of the acting and everything, I'll try and get to those as well. But this is just a film that I wanted to watch. As I mentioned, Aronofsky, and definitely from Brendan Fraser, and we'll get to him in a second. Give me a follow on Twitter. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor, and I'll post all the times that I go live and what you can expect. I've actually changed the cover art on my Twitter now to something which might be a little bit of a tease as to something that I've got planned towards the end of this year, but it'll soon come around. And if you got to this film last week, you beat me to the punch. Let me know your thoughts on The Whale as well, if you've seen it, if you're considering seeing it. And also, let's go with what your favorite Brendan Fraser performance is, because there's a lot of love for Brendan Fraser again right now. I don't think that love's ever gone away. I love his fan base, and he just seems like one of the realest people in Hollywood. After everything that he went through, years out of the limelight for, all kinds of reasons, it's good to have him back. And it shows that he's still got it. And I think between him and Keanu Reeves, they're the two most wholesome people in all of Hollywood. Carl immediately out of the gate says, I'm very conflicted with this film. The main performance was great and deserves the awards, but the actual story I found a bit flat. Felt like a stage show. Glad you liked it, though. Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, it was based on a play, a 2012 play. I think it's credited at the end. The guy who wrote the play was Samuel D. Hunter. And oftentimes when you do get a stage show or a play that's made into film form, there are inherently going to be a lot of similarities there based on the screenplay, but usually with the restricted cast as well. This isn't a massive cast in terms of the people in the film. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 characters inherently cast in this whole film. But I kind of like that sometimes. We have these big, sprawling, epic films, and then when we get towards the Oscars, especially when something's based on a play, I do like those more smaller, intimate performances, those smaller scale films where you can just rein it back and just let the performances speak for themselves. Moving on to the performances, this is inherently what the strong suit of this film is, and I'll completely agree with your opinions on that there. So it's nominated in three award categories this year at the 95th Academy Awards. Best Actor for Brendan Fraser, Best Supporting Actress for let's see, Hong Chow, and Best Makeup and Hairstyling. I think it's a strong contender in all of those, absolutely, and Brendan Fraser especially, quite deservedly so, of all the praise he's been getting for this film. And just to see him in his award acceptance speeches and everything, he feels like he gives the impression that he's completely overwhelmed by the love and response that all the fans are giving him. I saw recently, actually, he attended a screening in London for a double feature of the Mummy films, because the third one never happened. We don't talk about the third one. And he showed up and he introduced the film, and, you know, it's great. I really wish I'd have gone to that now, because he just seems like a really chill, relatable guy. So obviously he plays the character of Charlie in this, who, I guess if you don't know the plot of the movie, it's about a reclusive English teacher with severe obesity, morbidly obese. I think the play has him at around 600 pounds. And he's trying to restore his relationship with his teenage daughter. The story kind of revolves around themes of, shame, religion, regrets. Obviously, it's about and kind of suicide in a way, almost. It's a very hard-hitting film. You're essentially watching this character eat himself to death very slowly over the course of time, and it's it's incredibly emotionally wrought. There's themes, of course, of sexuality in there. The character of Charlie having left his marriage and leaving his daughter at the age of 8 to go, and he fell in love with one of his students, and left his family for a man, essentially. So it deals with all the themes of that, and the love and regret, and leaving his family behind. So there's a lot of really hard-hitting themes in this story, and I think they're beautifully exemplified through Brendan Fraser's powerhouse performance. I like when directors, because I was reading a bit about the making of this film, and I think Aronofsky wanted to make this film for about 10 years. And the one avenue that he kept hitting a roadblock with was, which actor can he get to play Charlie? And eventually he was watching a movie that starred Brendan Fraser, and he was like, that's my guy. And I like when directors take a chance on these actors that maybe aren't as popular currently in the main, limelight of things. And Tarantino is great for that as well. If you go back to stuff like Pulp Fiction, for example, with John Travolta's career was just kind of gone by that point, and through Pulp Fiction it revitalized it, and we saw a John Travolta that we never thought we would see, or ever thought he would do a role like that. David Carradine as well, when he cast him as Bill, it was on obviously TV shows like Kung Fu, which was clearly an inspiration for stuff like Kill Bill for Tarantino, but kind of a small scale actor featured in loads of B movies and just kind of phoning it in. It's nice when an actor actually gets the chance to flex their dramatic chops. And I think this is an absolute tour de force return for Brendan Fraser. Absolutely disappears into the character of Charlie, which brings me on to the hair and makeup. I think this film absolutely has to win Best Hair and Makeup. Reminded me a lot of, and it shows how far makeup's come as well. When we get a film that actually makes extensive use of it. Rick Baker, for example, one of the best, arguably the best, hair and makeup creator in all of Hollywood, since retired now, obviously, but his work on Nutty Professor, the Eddie Murphy film from the 90s, I believe he won the Academy Award for that. He won loads of Academy Awards for his work, but I think this has got a fair shot. If something like The Nutty Professor can win it, then I think The Whale absolutely deserves a shot at it. I believe the suit that Brendan Fraser was wearing weighed close to about 300 pounds, which, watching interviews with him, he said was absolutely necessary. Grueling. I think it took like 4 hours every single day to apply to get into the character, but having a costume that's that restrictive and that heavy as well. Brendan Fraser said that it was necessary to get into character as of Charlie, and how he would move and how it would feel yourself to be carrying that mass amount of weight around with you. I really like Sadie Sink's performance as well, famous from Stranger Things, of course. She's a relatively new actress from that, really, but it's nice to see her sort of break into films more. I thought she was fantastic, gave a really emotive performance as his teenage daughter, who's very angry at the world and the people in it. And throughout the course of the film has to try and reconnect this relationship with her father. I thought she was great. And of course, Hong Chow as well, nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Very multifaceted character in this film. And, you know, if you want to dive into the get my words out, the psychology, there we go, of these characters, it's very interesting. I was actually reading a lot of reviews on this film, and it does seem quite polarizing. I think, you know, Carl, you mentioned in your review there that you're conflicted on the film. When this film first came out, and I was reading the initial, you know, the numerical reviews, 5 out of 5 or whatever. I don't really go with reviews like that. I tend to just talk and see where I lie on a film. But when this film first came out, I was seeing, you know, 5 out of 5, you know, tremendous film and everything like that. But then over the course of the last week or so, you know, just when the hype died down from when the nominations were released, seeing a lot more negative reviews on this, or at least mixed middle of the road kind of stuff. And from what I can gather, reading the criticism that's been leveled against this film, it's the fact of how it depicts fat people, labeling, you know, Aronofsky in his depiction of obese people as being very fat phobic. It seems like everything nowadays is some kind of phobic. I actually didn't get that impression because obesity and people with eating disorders, you know, it's a huge spectrum, and people are complex beings, and, you know, do that to themselves for all manner of reasons. You know, you get some people that are obese, morbidly obese, and then you get some people who are, when you see them on the TV, like 800, 900 pounds or something like that, and their way of life is immensely limited and hard to watch a lot of times. And we're just kind of seeing insight to that. So I never really got the impression I never really got the impression that this was fat phobic in any way. I think it is just showing that if you do have someone of this size, it's not saying that they're a horrible person in the film or anything like that. It is just a window into the character of Charlie's life, and, you know, a life that I'm sure, you know, many people out there do suffer from and go through. And I think it has actually a lot of empathy for his character throughout the film. Is he a completely unsung good guy when you break it down and what he's done and, you know, what he did to his family? No, but he's a complex character, and I like that it didn't shy away from that. He's a human being with positives and negatives. He has regrets as to what he did, but he's also lived a life of love. You know, he's done things that he's proud of. He's the father of this, you know, brilliant daughter. And he's trying to make her realize how amazing she is throughout the course of the film. So I wouldn't say it's really negative in the, obviously getting to this size and living a life of this size probably, well, almost certainly isn't good for you. But I see it as more as like a fable, really. And I think one of the reasons that this film was impactful to me, certainly, I've never really talked about myself, really, not all that much in terms of, you know, what you see off camera, but at about the age of 19, I was a big boy. I was an obese child all of my life, very, very obese, not Charlie level obese, but I was big. And I'm going to try and find the conversion here for my transatlantic cousins, who go with pounds instead of stone. I never actually weighed myself at the beginning of my diet, and they say that you lose the most amount of weight within the first couple of weeks of dieting, and I dieted cold turkey pretty much, and exercised. I could only manage about a minute initially, worked it up to 5 minutes, worked it up to 10, and a month and a half into my diet, I was 18 stone. So let's 18 and a half stone, sorry. So 18.5 stone in pounds. As I say, I was a big boy. So a month and a half into the diet, I weighed 259 pounds. So I always equate that I was probably clocking in at about 20 stone, maybe just slightly over. So give or take 280 pounds or so. I was a big boy. And I kind of had my moment of clarity. So granted, I wasn't eating for the same reasons that Charlie was in this film, but, you know, as I say, people are complex with their food addiction, or, you know, some people have it as a coping strategy. Some people just eat out of boredom. Some people are pressured to do it. You know, a lot of the times it's an escape from something, isn't it? And that's probably why I did it. And yeah, so I don't think it's really showing any ill will towards fat people. So I'm not really sure where the reviews of that are coming from, to be honest, because I think it does show a lot of empathy for the character. You are wanting him to get better. You are willing him throughout the movie to get better. As I mentioned, Brendan Fraser does completely disappear into the role, but I think his inherent likability definitely does aid to that empathy throughout the film. We all love Brendan Fraser, and we're all rooting for him. And I think that although he does disappear behind the makeup, that still does transcend the character, I think, in a lot of ways. At least it did to me. Carl says his friend really made me... hang on. His friend really made me... I think, mad, sorry. His friend really made me mad with bringing his fast food every day. Just shows the people around us aren't always helping. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you did correct yourself there. Sorry, I was trying to decipher what you'd written, and you'd already corrected yourself underneath. Yeah, I mean that became very apparent in the film as well, that she was almost like an enabler, wasn't she? There are moments, again, if someone was that size, I wouldn't be bringing them buckets of KFC every day. So yeah, she is definitely part of the problem, Hong Chau's character. There are moments though, you know, she doesn't walk in and hand him the bucket. She puts it on the table at the back and sits down next to him. It's towards the beginning of the film, and he says, like, you know, I need it, like, please. And she kind of looks at him and she hesitates, and he kind of urges, like, no, I want it. And then she's like, okay, and gets it. So there are moments where she's holding back. But yeah, if you're going through that, don't do it. If you care for someone, don't be buying someone a bucket of KFC every day. She's bringing him like meatball Subway sandwiches, like 2 of them and stuff. So yeah, she's picking them off the floor. Again, if delving into the psychology of these characters, throughout the course of the film, we learned that Hong Chau's character, her brother was Charlie's lover. And throughout the course, from like pressure from the home and pressures of religion and status and, you know, family honor and everything like that, the father basically just cut him off from the church, cut him out of the family, and he began to wither away. He went the opposite way. He refused to eat. He wasn't sleeping. He was really emaciated. He was weak, and he was anorexic at that point. So in a way, he also had an eating disorder all the same, but, you know, went the opposite way. And I think that probably does have an impact on her character when she watched her brother essentially waste away into nothing until eventually he committed suicide. She's probably trying to counteract that, you know, psychologically. When she's seen someone go through that who isn't eating, she's probably now trying to compensate by making someone eat, by making sure that they're fed. That's how I kind of looked into that. No, she's not a good character. You know, I mean, she is there taking care of him, I guess, but also she is keeping him at this state, and she isn't exactly helping his eating habits. Later on throughout the film, she says that I get the impression that someone has to save themselves. If someone wants to change, they have to do it by themselves. They can't be helped. I disagree with that. I think people can. I think inherently the person has to want it for themselves, but I do think, and what I chalk my weight loss up to, because I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you today if I'd have carried on the way I was going on. I was getting, heart palpitations. I was struggling to breathe at night and things like that. Walking around, there was a moment where my friend was really worried for me. He lives in the next village to me, and it's all uphill. And I went to visit him when I was at my biggest, and I had to stop about 6 times up the hill. And when I got to his house, apparently he describes me as looking white as a ghost. I was pale. I was perspiring. I was shaking. Yeah, it wasn't good. But I chalked my weight loss up to one of my friends saying, I think I'd had like a bad eating day or something. Crisps and pizza were my go-to. And even now, crisps and pizza are still like my favorite foods that I always have to struggle and resist. And my friend said like, well, you didn't have a great day today with the food. Tomorrow, just try and cut back a little bit. Just try and cut back on how many crisps you're eating and stuff like that. But then that was it. As soon as he said that, something clicked up here. And granted, I was the one who had to do that, but I do think that someone can help someone, or at least give them a nudge in the right direction. But yeah, she is very much an enabler in this film, which is... And I don't know if they're trying to chalk her up as that. I don't know if they're trying to say that she is trying to help him. But inherently, when you break down her actions, she is kind of part of the problem. The best one is, his daughter, when she's spending time with him, she says, okay, I'm going to make me a sandwich. I'm going to make you one too, but it's going to be a small one, and I'm not going to put any mayo on there. It's just going to be turkey. He needed someone like that. But also, I get the impression, well, throughout the film, that he was so far gone that he was kind of beyond saving. He already assigned himself to his fate. He was already standing on the edge of the abyss. And the one thing in his life that he thought he could do right by was his daughter, and make sure that she was set on a path where she was sympathetic. She showed empathy towards others, and she would be authentic. Authenticity is a big thing for him in this, where he teaches his students to be authentic with what they write and to really put an essence of themselves into their work and into their life. And I think by the end of the film, he achieves that. Comparing it to other Aronofsky movies, without giving too much of the ending away, a lot of similarities between this and The Wrestler, I think, in a lot of ways. If you've seen The Wrestler, you probably know where I'm going with that. And even to some extent, Black Swan as well, based on the endings. I was just kind of blown away by this film at the end of it. Is it a film that I'll rush back to watch? Probably not. But it kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of Aronofsky's other movies. They're not ones that I really rush back and watch, but when I watch them at the time, they are incredibly thought-provoking, and I'm usually moved or think about the film following it. Yeah, absolutely, hands down. I agree with you about the performances. They are definitely, a cut above the rest with this film. And it does feel very small scale, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I really like the aspect ratio of this film as well. I didn't talk about that. It's always like it's cropped, sort of like the 4:3 kind of thing. And that to me helped with that sense of, whether this was intentional or not, I don't know. It added to that sense of claustrophobia that Charlie is basically just trapped in this house. He's unable to leave. And I think, whether subconsciously or whatnot, I think the aspect ratio of the film really did give that sense of, feeling enclosed, feeling trapped, which I really appreciated with the film. I thought that worked really well. The music as well, very understated throughout the film, but when it does, build to those emotional moments, I thought it was incredibly impactful. Rob Simonson did the music. I'm actually not familiar with his body of work. I did check through some of his stuff. The music does sound very similar to the likes of the soundtrack of The Fountain. I actually thought it was the same composer, but I don't believe it is. And I'd be fascinated to know how he did a lot of the score with this, because there are moments where it almost does sound like he's taken whale song or whale calls and manipulated them in a certain way and added them into the mix, or maybe used instrumentation that mirrors whale song. I could be way off base with that, but especially in the ending credits where it's a lot of ambience, it really sounded like that to me. So, yeah, in terms of this film, how would I rank it? I thought it was an incredible performance piece. Brendan Fraser, Sadie Sink, and Hong Chow especially. masterful direction as well from Aronofsky. It's not as grandiose as, well, pretty much a lot of his other films. Certainly things like The Fountain, The Wrestler, and Black Swan, I don't think it's as much of a spectacle as that. But then I don't think it needed to be. It's just kind of a window into this person's life and watching them deal with, you know, all of the trauma and, you know, probably the PTSD and their way of coping with things. It's very hard to watch at some points in this film. And you are rooting for the main character, but yeah, Brendan Fraser deserves all the credit for this film. I really hope he wins the Oscar. I think he's got a good shot at it. I really do. And it'd be nice to see him get the recognition that he really deserves and that he's still got it. And hopefully from the success of this film and his performance in there, it'll mean more things, and we get to see more of him. So that'd be great. I don't really have any other thoughts on this film. I enjoyed it for what it was, despite it being very hard hitting. I get criticisms against it, you know, if the film itself if you thought it was a little bit flat, if there wasn't much flair to it. But to me, that smaller scale worked for it. And I think if it was this big, elaborate movie, I think that might have taken away from some of the more intimate relationships within the film. But yeah, anyway, that'll do it for my review on The Whale. Obviously, let me know your thoughts on it if you haven't done so already, or if you're discovering this video after the fact. As I mentioned, this is probably the earliest that I've live streamed in a long, long time. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. With the Academy Awards coming up, I'm going to be watching a lot more movies. I think tomorrow I'm going to be watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The next couple of films we're going to do, we're going to touch on some of the animated stuff, I think. And what is the film that I'm going to see later in the week? The name always escapes me. Oh, God. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. I'm seeing that on Thursday. I'm very surprised that Odeon Cinemas are getting that. It seems like it's very much a under-the-radar one this year for the animated film category. And then a lot of the other films, I think, are on Netflix and various platforms like that. Quiet on the Western Front, I know, is on Netflix. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, I believe, is on Netflix as well. So I can mop up some of those other films over the course of the next few weeks. As I said, 4 weeks. I have 4 weeks to get them all watched. I've got my tickets booked for a couple of weeks' time when Tar's released, the Cate Blanchett movie. There's the Banshees of Inisherin, which is coming out at the cinema. So I'm going to be ticking them all off one by one, but we'll get through them. Give me a follow on Twitter as well. Why not? You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor, and I'll let you know when all these projects are coming up. Once the Oscars are out of the way, I do want to get back into weekly content a lot more, and I want to go through some retrospectives. As I mentioned, if you go onto my Twitter, as I say, it's going across the bottom of the screen now. I've got some new cover art up on there at the moment, which is a bit of a tease as to what you might expect towards the end of the year. I've also been in talks with JX Editor, who came to me with a retrospective of films that he wants to do later on in the year. But any suggestions, anything you want to see, any filmographies of directors you'd like to see, or even franchises or something like that, do let me know, because yeah, it'd be good to get into weekly content and more quizzes and stuff like that. You know, it's all going to come to the channel. So anyway, that'll do it for me. Hope you guys have a very good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you're watching this from, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.